Okay, so let's dive in. The world is tough. I mean, it really is going to beat you down.
Yeah, it's described pretty bluntly in the source as the ultimate competitor.
Exactly. And that's the intense reality we're jumping into today, pulling directly from the material you shared?
Absolutely. We're doing a deep dive into these specific excerpts from a David Goggins speech, the one on the Motiversity channel. It's a very particular philosophy.
Right. And our mission here is pretty focused. Unpack the core message from this material. You know, the no-nonsense stuff about facing adversity, building resilience, finding that purpose inside.
What are the key takeaways here? From this specific angle on tackling challenges, achieving self-mastery, it's really about understanding his blueprint from this source.
Yeah, not just generic motivation. We're looking at the essence from your sources of this intense philosophy for inner toughness.
Exactly, what it really asks of you.
And the foundation, like you said, it starts starkly. The world is tough.
Mm-hmm. It's described as constantly trying to, take you out, finding your weakness, and just hammering it relentlessly.
That's the baseline given. No escaping it.
Oh.
And the source really emphasizes this thing called unchosen suffering.
Yeah, unchosen suffering. That's the trauma, the devastation, the awful stuff that, well, the source says will come. You don't choose it.
It just arrives. So if that's going to happen anyway, what's the strategy here? It introduces this counter idea, chosen suffering.
Chosen suffering. Yeah, why would you choose it?
Right. Seems counterintuitive.
But the material argues it's really the only way to prepare for the unchosen stuff. You can't, practice for hardship when everything's easy.
So what does that look like practically from the source?
It suggests doing something that, well, sucks every single day.
Okay, sucks.
Yeah.
Not necessarily running 200 miles, right? The source clarifies that.
No, not necessarily that extreme, but just something difficult, consistently.
Why, though? What's the goal?
The point is building this psychological capability, emotional toughness, developing a part of you that's resilient, able to process bad situations quickly.
Ah, so you don't get stuck, like hitting a wall.
Exactly, not getting stuck like a Jersey barrier, as the source puts it. You maneuver through because you've built that strength through voluntary hardship. You practiced.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads into this whole idea of self-discovery, doesn't it?
It does. The goal presented is getting to a point where nothing can hurt you because you just know yourself that well.
Profound self-understanding.
Yeah.
And how do you get there? The method described is this mental lab.
The mental lab, yeah. A place for constant study of myself. That's the quote.
So it's about figuring out what needs conquering.
By actively going towards what I don't like, what I'm not comfortable with, seeking it out.
So it's not passive navel-gazing. It's actively confronting the uncomfortable stuff, the demons.
Mm-hmm. And the source specifically calls out shame and embarrassment, says they're huge obstacles, things that kill people nowadays.
Wow. And the instruction is just direct.
Super direct. Face it, fix it, make it better. That's the mantra.
Okay. And this self-study, it includes this term, live autopsy. What's that?
Yeah, powerful term. Usually an autopsy is finding out why someone died after they're gone.
Right.
This is about figuring out why we're dying while we are alive.
Wait.
The personal story in the source talks about feeling dead while living, and then this process leading to a kind of rebirth, finding the why while you can still act on it.
And using all those past experiences, even the bad ones, as fuel, as knowledge.
Exactly. Go into the archives of your life, dig it up, study it, and use it for yourself. Turn it into strength.
Okay, so you build this tough, self-aware person, and that brings us to purpose. The material seems to challenge the usual way we think about purpose.
It really does. It contrasts the common stuff, running a 5K, getting into that school, landing the job.
The external goals.
Yeah, those external things. Framed as things people often need these things to perform. They rely on them.
But the argument here is different.
Very. The core argument is that you need to be able to perform at your absolute highest level without any of that stuff on the docket, with no external goal in sight.
Why? Why is that the standard to aim for?
So you're ready, completely ready, operating at peak when the time comes.
When the unchosen suffering hits.
Precisely. When the real challenges arrive, you're already firing on all cylinders.
And the big insight here? The purpose isn't external at all.
Not at all. It is always there. It never leaves us. Why? Because, and this is the core quote, the very purpose is you.
You are the purpose.
You are the purpose, always.
Okay, if you really internalize that,
yeah.
What does it mean for motivation?
Well, the implication shared is pretty stark. If you don't feel like doing something hard, something to better yourself, then you don't care enough about yourself, because the #1 purpose in life is to better oneself. Self-betterment is the purpose.
Wow. So it flips motivation entirely inward. It's not about the prize, it's about personal pride.
Personal pride, exactly. I have pride in myself. That's the internal driver when there's no race to win.
And the source connects this to the origin story, building Goggins.
Yeah, from the scared kid who quit, getting better by doing hard things without an external reason, digging holes, waking up early just because, building that internal drive.
So if that internal purpose is the engine, but external motivation is downplayed, how do you keep going? How do you harness that energy consistently?
Right, because motivation can be flaky, and the material acknowledges that. Motivation is called just a word.
Okay, so if not motivation, then what? Discipline.
Discipline, yeah, you need clear goals, sure, but it echoes that Jocko idea. Discipline eats motivation for breakfast.
The discipline is the key. But this source adds something else, right? A prerequisite for discipline to even work effectively.
Yes, a crucial one. You need a clear headspace.
A clear headspace, meaning?
Meaning your mind can't be chaotic. The analogies used are vivid. A cluttered garage where you can't find tools, or a blown circuit breaker.
If your mind is just full of noise, worries.
Exactly. Full of shit, kids, wife, job, all the outside interference, as the source puts it. If your mind's a mess, discipline and motivation, they can't find a foothold. They can't function reliably.
Okay, so how do you clear the headspace? What's the solution offered?
The idea is creating mental zones, organizing your mind, compartmentalizing things onto nice shelves.
But organizing a real space, but mentally.
Pretty much. So when you need discipline or focus, you know exactly where to find it. Where's my, I can put discipline right there. It's accessible.
And how do you achieve that mental organization? Is there a specific method mentioned?
Yes, meditation. Specifically, the source mentions 2 hours every night.
2 hours, wow.
Yeah, described as needing that time to refresh, to reorganize the garage, the mind, get everything in its right spot.
So that daily practice creates order, builds armor for the day.
That's the concept presented. Mental organization as armor.
And you need that armor, that organized mind, because the path forward, according to this, it's uncomfortable.
Deeply uncomfortable. The source insists your true self is found in that very uncomfortable zone.
You just will not find toughness in a comfortable environment. Seems pretty absolute.
It's presented as a fundamental truth in this philosophy. Comfort doesn't build strength.
So how do you find toughness then? Where do you look?
You have to, and this sounds intense, drown yourself in a position where you're just out of sorts.
Like deliberately put yourself where you feel like you can't swim and you're drowning.
That's the imagery used, yeah. In that extreme discomfort, that's where you come face to face with who you are. And that moment of confrontation is the starting point.
The starting point for real growth. Okay. And what about goals? How does this view setting goals?
It challenges the usual way. Setting goals you know you can reach. That's framed as not really succeeding.
How so?
It means you're playing it safe. You're afraid to go into the dark place, the uncomfortable zone where growth happens.
So the alternative is?
Always set goals you genuinely think you cannot achieve. Aim impossibly high.
Why? Because the growth is in the attempt.
Exactly. The growth happens in there. Inside the fear, insecurity, doubt that comes with tackling something that seems impossible.
And it's not easy. It requires mental pain.
Significant mental pain, yeah. Doing things you really don't want to do over and over.
Until it becomes automatic, like breathing.
Until it becomes second nature. That's the path described.
Okay, so all this striving, this discipline, this self-confrontation, it all seems to hinge on controlling your own mind.
Absolutely. The source calls your brain the most powerful weapon in the world. Especially, it notes, when you put the distractions away, phones, computers.
Because in the really hard times, depression, loss, real-life shit, you're alone with it.
You're alone with your brain, and it's talking to you constantly. And it wants to control you, pull you towards comfort, towards quitting.
The imperative, then, is pretty stark.
Extremely. If you can't control your own brain and your brain controls you, you're fucked. Plain and simple.
You have to be the one in charge. You got to tell your brain where you want to go.
You dictate the terms, not your impulses or fears.
And is there a technique shared for, say, overcoming mental blocks, like when you're trying to learn something really hard?
Yeah, the approach is relentless persistence. Keep going back and going back and going back to it.
Just brute force learning.
Essentially, yeah. You give the mind no way out, no escape route.
And the idea is the mind eventually gives in.
It realizes you simply will not stop, so it's forced to adapt and overcome. You immerse yourself, you become it, you make that difficult thing your new norm.
That constant pressure forces adaptation. Okay. This leads us towards the end goal, maybe, towards victory. But the source seems to redefine victory, too.
It does. It draws on the personal story again, that history of quitting when things got hard, even after putting in the training.
Right. And the shift came from watching Navy SEALs.
Visualizing being one of them, not just to achieve the status, but to experience the feeling of respect, accomplishment, victory.
But what was that victory specifically? Was it about beating someone else?
No, that's the critical insight here. It wasn't about external competition. The victory, as defined in this context, was just finishing.
Just getting through it. Going the extra mile against your own limits.
Exactly. Against your own desire to quit, that was the win.
And the source says the real power was found.
Where? By putting himself in the battle, constantly going to war with myself every day, facing those insurmountable obstacles internally.
So the power isn't in never falling, but in getting up when you're broken.
That's the ultimate conclusion presented. Power is found when you are broken, but you still fight. When you feel like, I have no other place to go but forward.
Wow. And that connects back to the uncomfortable zone.
Your true self, your real capability, is found right there. Forged through trials, tribulations, suffering, accountability. It's an internal forging process.
So it's a definition of strength built entirely internally, through struggle, persistence, all drawn directly from the source material you shared.
Yeah, so if we look back at this intense blueprint we've unpacked from the Goggins material, what stands out?
Well, the necessity of facing discomfort, for sure. That chosen suffering idea as preparation.
Right. And the power of knowing you are the purpose, that internal drive.
And discipline over motivation. That's huge. Plus, the need for that clear, organized mind as a foundation.
Mental organization, yeah. And redefining victory, it's about persistence. Just finishing, not necessarily coming in first place externally.
These are definitely challenging insights pulled straight from the source you gave us. Offers a stark perspective on building resilience.
It's a hard look at self-reliance, definitely.
Absolutely. And maybe for you listening, something to really consider from this material is that idea. You are always the purpose.
What does that really mean for how you approach your day, especially when there's nothing on the docket, no big external thing driving you?
Yeah. And how might adding some small bits of that chosen suffering, that deliberate discomfort, how might that change how you handle the unchosen suffering this source says is, well, guaranteed?
Definitely something to think about. A different way to frame the struggles.